Why EV price and delivery are determined by a gram scale part at EV. A part measured in grams can be used to compute the price and delivery date. Within the rotor, the permanent magnet is undetectable. The rhythm of the ensemble is disturbed without it. Overnight, the prospect of a 200% tariff intensified pressure on this section and changed the focus of the discussion from a technical detail to a headline about market-scale danger. The problem for Tesla, GM, and Ford is not a parts bill, but rather the ongoing production of automobiles and stability in terms of consumer pricing. Washington is negotiating with severe words. The schedule's realities are being examined by American factories. The supply chain cycle and domestic market labels will vary simultaneously if the friction between them continues. Thus, the true question is whether production will continue due to the capacity plan or the danger. Let's make the function of permanent magnets in the EV simpler. The world. They offer smaller motors, more efficiency, and less heat loss for the same power, all of which have an immediate impact on packaging, acceleration, and range. As a result, in the automotive sector, permanent magnet synchronous motors have gained popularity in 200% threat of tariffs. For specifics to highlight risk in recent years and have grown in importance in portfolios of EV vehicles. It can appear that only a modest amount of magnet is utilized each vehicle. But if a single link in the supply chain fails, the overall cost does not grow in a linear fashion. The cost of materials is not the only thing lost. The company expenses brought on by delays and outages constitute the loss. Therefore, the disruption to the schedule rather than the part itself is the most costly situation if the import flow is disrupted. The Tesla GM Ford axis helps to clarify the situation. Due to the efficiency benefits of permanent magnet systems, Tesla has established a variety of balance of performance in its EVs. Using this architecture, GM standardized its motor architecture on Ultium, their equivalent decision. Ford used the same strategy when designing its car packaging for models like the Mach-E. Critical reliance on a single component is the technical consequence of the U.S. tariff threat for these three businesses. The distinction between the political terminology used by the danger and the day-to-day existence of PMSM fundamentals. Today's price and delivery uncertainties are a result of factories' efficiency, range, and packaging. Let's address the substitution concern in a practical manner. Theoretically, there are alternatives like induction or reluctance-based motors, but a big fleet cannot make the design switch overnight. Supply planning, software calibration, cooling, and factory architecture must all be altered simultaneously. Tests for durability and certification need to be repeated. Therefore, you cannot make the big changeover to magnet-free production tomorrow morning if you cut the permanent magnet today. The process of substitution is significant, but maintaining availability through imports rather than the promise of substitution is what will sustain vehicle manufacturing in the near future. What then is the argument behind a 200% tariff? In talks, it exerts pressure on the other party. However, the uncertainty is priced by market forces. Everyday swings become expensive for firms, even if the U.S. administration suggests it would keep the flow going with temporary exemptions. Supply credits, insurance, and transportation expenses all increase when noise levels under the trade heading grow. Tesla, GM, and Ford shared magnet transportation of stock and dependence grow more challenging. As a result, consumer price is permanently impacted. The effect on the parts label is more than a few tens of dollars. The overall cost of financing and delivery delays is in the thousands. Permanent magnets are not limited to the automobile industry. The same materials constrain affects industrial automation motors, defense applications, wind turbine generators used in the energy sector, and certain medical equipment products. Public projects and defense orders vie with the automobile industry for a portion of the same pool when the discussion of priority starts. This adds another level of expense to the market. The automobile industry is delayed if energy and defense units are given precedence. Public initiatives will have to wait if the automobile sector gets precedence. The sensible solution is to boost capacity and avoid obstructing the flow during the changeover, not to quarrel over shares. The notion of ensuring availability and controlling costs is the most practical short-term strategy at the Tesla, GM, and Ford scale. This implies quota calendars, expedited origin procedures, and temporary exclusions based on product and nation actual cost, replanning verification, financing days, and downtime. Because of this flexibility, auto production keeps going unhindered and consumer prices gradually rise. Otherwise, the line stops if there are no parts, and the cost rise includes both the magnet's price and the entire stoppage cost. Customers in the United States domestic market. States do not see the technical specifics, only the delivery date and the ultimate price tag. The story's simplicity is not a coincidence. Let's now discuss the medium term. Implementing step-by-step procedures from alloying to inning to the finished magnet with investment and quality standards is the method to create a permanent magnet chain in the United States. Some facilities have begun producing metal and are now producing automotive-grade magnets in trial form. A yearly capacity of about 1,000 tons is indicated by the initial targets. Although this is a decent beginning, it is still constrained when taking into account all three businesses' needs. As a result, the only substitution limits in the medium term seem to be a hybrid model of domestic capacity plus external flow, realistic induction/reluctance timelines. In other words, there is little noise about U.S. tariffs. Schedules are set for imports, and domestic lines are progressively extended. The third step in this transformation is recycling. The strain on raw materials is progressively lessened by gathering and reprocessing parts that contain NDFB. But recycling is a business in and of itself. Establishing logistics, quality, and traceability results in a valuable pool. Service and spare parts are where it first shows up. Although it doesn't instantly save popular production, it acts as a protective barrier. This reduces market volatility and softens the way for Tesla, GM, and Ford. Recycling and domestic capabilities together eventually lessen reliance on imports. Let's make the calculation for time and pricing simpler. Although the parts factory cost seems cheap, the entire cycle determines the true cost of the supply shock. Transportation, insurance, carrying inventory, financing days, and item replacements all add cost. Consequently, the portion effect, which seems to be tens of dollars per unit, can result in a near-term difference. Targeted exemptions can save the company thousands of dollars by ensuring availability. This is what the client observes in the field. The model they are following on the list has a changing delivery date. The market dislikes this as the campaign calendar changes and used car prices momentarily increase. Stability is the foundation of trust. Another communication challenge for Ford, GM, and Tesla. Customers believe that uncertainty comes at a higher cost when there are unclear answers to the questions of why, how much, and when. The impact of a 200% tariff declaration is further lessened by a visible calendar. It is comforting for the home market that the message is still available and that the prices are being introduced gradually. This is not a bad statement. It involves disseminating the information at a rate that the market can tolerate. Additionally, this maintains the froth on the used automobile side under control. The three brands' production architectures are becoming more adaptable so that essential parts can be operated in different combinations. This lessens an over-reliance on one component. This evolution, though, has to be tested and validated. The schedule is short-term guaranteed by availability. Consequently, regardless of how harsh the language of the U.S. government may be in the medium term, domestic capacity plus external flow plus recycling the origin and license schedule dictate the band's tempo. Flexibility in the field is necessary for toughness at the trade relations table. Targeted exemptions and planned capacity building help strike a balance. So, how are priorities managed outside of the automotive industry? It is necessary to increase total supply rather than queue when defense energy, defense lines, and wind turbines compete for the same magnet pool. A dependable structure for public procurement and an automobile flow guaranteed framework can be created at the same time. Instead of a general tariff, this calls for a sectoral transition bridge. Efficiency rises when the budget source reaches the goal. From the standpoint of the public treasury, this is also sustainable because the economy eliminates regulated transitions rather than widespread cost shocks. Under the corporate funding section, the image is evident. The cost of credit rises and business cash flow slows down as uncertainty increases. It makes sense for the three cross-sector pull brands, wind, defense, and industry, to look for duration and quantity guarantees in their supply contracts because of this. Market risk is shared via origin diversity, bilateral agreements, and price adjustment clauses for particular time periods. Schedule reliability, not list prices, is the reason for the import flow. Timetable consumer pricing increases less than anticipated as a reward for dependability. It must be expressed explicitly as well. The idea that manufacturing will resume and tariffs will be raised is insufficient on its own. In addition to purchasing buildings and machinery, building factories also entails guaranteeing process stability and uniformity in quality. When the requisite magnetic characteristics and endurance are not attained in the initial efforts, it is natural for automobile approval to be delayed. This cycle lasts for a number of quarters. Therefore, tying the tariff to the calendar is the technological solution to the tariff versus industrial plan conundrum. Give the industrial plan substance. This increases domestic capacity, reduces market shock, and maintains bargaining strength. What may we expect in the near future? First, inventory control will become more stringent. The ports and logistics, maintaining slots, Reducing delays, 3 brands will boost their buffer levels instead of turning key parts at high cycle speeds and seek flexibility in supply contracts. This entails more consistent use of port and air cargo facilities on the import side. The domestic market will weather this period with minimal price rises if the flow continues unhindered. Delivery lists will get longer, and used car prices would momentarily increase if it is interrupted. The distinction between these two scenarios will become obvious in the actual flow of the following weeks rather than in day-to-day rhetoric. What should we expect in the medium term? Recycling initiatives expand, domestic capacity rises, and supply agreements become flexible but legally binding. A multi-source security network replaces the idea of a single point of failure in the automotive sector. Prices will create a greater plateau than previously, but the wavelength will get shorter. The market will reward this. Long-term demand is stronger as volatility declines. Diversity in architecture will eventually reappear. Magnet-free solutions may contract design on certain platforms. Origin variety, amount, and duration when efficiency and materials are balanced guarantees receive a higher share. Permanent magnets will be maintained on others because to their benefit in efficiency. This hybrid form lowers dependence on a single raw material bottleneck. This diversity is also accommodated by industrial strategy. According to the U.S. administration, total independence in a single category is not the aim. Dependency in critical categories is non-fragile. In the car industry, this objective results in stable prices and deliveries. Let's review our current framework, outlined thus far in a single statement that focuses on Ford, GM, and Tesla. Today, these 3 brands require a chain of American companies that will transport the permanent magnet from metal to the final component, as well as a transition timeline that does not halt the import flow while negotiating U.S. tariffs. Engine halted is still a controlled risk rather than a news story when these 2 actions are taken at the same time. Otherwise, the market cost is swiftly transferred to the customer, and a small portion of the supply chain locks up the entire chain. What's left? An unambiguous command to action. Prospects, price stability, and hybrid architecture in the short term ensure availability. In the medium term, increase capacity, and in the long run, diversify the architecture. The domestic market will stabilize and the business cycle will return to normal if this course is taken. Price and delivery waves will recur if this course is altered. This is where our visitors' main curiosity lies. Tariff or industrial plan? The answer is to relate the tariff to the calendar and implement the industrial plan with concrete projects without pitting the two against each other. We eagerly await your feedback. If you subscribe and activate notifications, we will continue